Good to have you on the show for the first time. I saw you. Um, I was looking up information on the World Predator Championships,
Okay.
and I saw your podcast you did
Oh,
with
with Ryan
Ryan
Buddy.
Buddy. Yeah, so really good job on that. And first, we've got a podcast audience. Tell people about your podcast.
Well, the podcast basically is it's not only Lake Erie kayak fishing, it's also cool things that are happening in the community, like the 4-HC camp they do with the kids, and the Barbie steelhead rod that brings in the funds for the Cleveland Fishing Fund and stuff like that. And I like to promote people, within the walleye world, that are doing great things like Ryan Buddy and some of these charter captains that they deserve a little bit of a push, because I think they're doing great things for the fishery and for the community.
Yeah, one of the things you do, and I've seen you here for a few years now, at least when I've been here, is you've got the kayak. You got the kayak set up right here, and
Right.
Lake Erie Kayak Fishing. That's your website, lakeeriekayakfishing.com.
Yep.
You got the USA Kayak Fishing hat on. Tell me about kayak fishing in the Great Lakes.
Well, it can be a little challenging and a little intimidating, but with the right tools, the right experience, and the right knowledge, it's a great time, and it's an opportunity to experience this fishery with kind of like a lower entry point,
Yeah.
instead of like going out and buying a $150,000
Boat
walleye
right
boat.
out the gate. Yeah.
Right. And some people have both. They have the fishing kayak and the boat. And if they're just going fishing by themselves, they'll take the kayak because it's cheaper to run. It's less work. You don't have to worry about
Yeah.
backing it into the water.
Yeah.
And it's like literally a different perspective. You're going from up here to like it's pretty intimate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like I took my buddy JJ and his son out from Trollco. They're a bait painter. And they're walleye boat guys. Took him out there, and he hooks into this big sheephead, and he's just over there like screaming like a little girl, having the best time of his life. I pulled over, and he's like, "Man, this is the funnest sheephead I've ever caught." Towing him around on the kayak, and it's just it's a totally different experience than fishing in the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about it yesterday. So and you were kind of explaining to me how you've got a few different kayaks set up. So you get a group maybe of people that want to go out and do a kayak trip, and so you'll kind of lead those, and you'll give them a rundown of the boats, and then you guys are all fishing individually, basically in the setups. Could kind of tell people about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than like going on a charter boat. When the captain's doing most of the work because he has most of the knowledge. And a lot of the boat captains, they're sharing that knowledge with their audience and their clients and stuff like that. But that's basically what my trip is like come out, get a complete crash course from beginning to end on how you do it, whether we're trolling or whether we're jigging or casting or even drift fishing. And we do troll a lot, especially when the walleye are moving. It allows you to cover a lot more water and find the fish. And just be productive on the way to the fish where you're casting. But it's totally different because when you're in your own kayak, you're responsible for everything. You're responsible for your leads, your program, your speed, your direction, your angle. If you're making, some S turns to create some different action down there, that's all on you. So they're really getting that crash course without even realizing it, and the full trolling experience along the way.
Yeah.
And then when we find a nice pot of fish, we'll stop and cast on them. Usually I'll give them like a casting rod and then throw a second rod out with like a bottom bouncer, with like a worm harness or a spoon, or even a shallow diver.
Yeah.
Let that shallow diver just tick down there, and just kind of open them up to everything that the fish
Yeah.
has to offer.
And that's what you were explaining. Like you're using all the same rigs that somebody in a traditional boat is using for the most part.
Right.
As far as techniques and everything else, you're kind of replicating that just on a different, from a different craft, really.
Right.
Yeah.
The only difference is like the 50-50 method on snap weights.
Yeah.
We don't use that because if you think about it, you have 250 foot of line out on a kayak.
Yeah.
You hit a wave or you hit a wind. Now you have all that slack in your
Oh,
line.
sure.
With the boat, you have that weight that's giving you that momentum. It's keeping your line tight. So what I like to do is I split the difference. So I'll do like a 25 foot and then a 2 ounce snap weight and another 25 foot. That way it's a shorter lead.
Okay.
And that estimated gets me somewhere, I'm guessing like 12 foot.
Okay.
You know, I'm usually getting those fish in the 12 to 20 foot range.
Okay.
If I want to go deeper, you know, I can do a little bit longer leads, or I can just add, you know,
More weight,
like a
yeah.
3 ounce or a 4 ounce or a 5 ounce.
Yeah.
And then I don't have all that line, number one, that I have to keep tight, bring in.
I mean,
just makes it a little bit easier for the kayak perspective.
it kind of stands to reason too. I mean, your boat presence is a lot, you know, smaller than what, you know, a big boat coming with a, you know, outboard or whatever, you know, roaring overhead versus, you know, you're pretty stealthy, you know, where,
Right.
you know, do you think that makes a difference? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we don't really have to run boards to get the presentations far away from the boat like the boat guys do.
okay.
But you know, if you're running 3 lines, it can be somewhat challenging.
Sure.
I'm running a 8'6" Okuma Classic Pro rods, the medium lights.
Okay.
Again, the medium light is because it's easy for that fish to move my kayak. I don't want to have too heavy of a rod where now it's fighting the kayak and not fighting the tackle.
Okay.
You know, so I go a little bit lighter. Plus, it's funner catching.
And that's with line counters or spinning rods,
Yeah,
or
with
with
line
line counters? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I use the Okuma Classic or the cold water 203.
Cold waters. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And they work real good.
Cool.
Well, one of the things that you said was it's up to you. I don't have anybody else in there. It's a one person show.
Right.
All right. So we catch a fish. We're reeling the fish. We're netting the fish, and we probably have two other lines out, for sure, one other line out.
Right.
How do you do all of that at the same time by yourself?
Well, for inexperienced people, I'll just give them one rod
Yeah.
Okay.
just to start out.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I want them to focus solely on what that rod's doing. You know, the action of the rod tip, the way, the angle that the line's going in. I don't want them to bounce back and forth, you know, because it's taking their focus away. Once they get the feel for that, I'll throw a second rod on there. But at that point, they have the understanding of controlling where that line's going and paying attention.
Okay.
So they're less likely to suck it into like their pedal drive,
Yeah.
or even the motor.
Yeah.
But
Right.
you know,
Yeah, because you've got some powered kayaks as well. You've got some, you know, with electric motors on them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the electric outboard, the Torpedo.
The torpedo. Yeah.
It's about a 3 horse equivalent.
Mhm.
Gets me going about 6.5 mile an hour.
That's cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Covers water, but you know, most importantly, we're going about 2 miles offshore with clients.
Okay.
Well, on
That's
a
what I was going to
kayak-
ask you, how far out you're going. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
On a kayak, you know, consistently you're going to move about 2 miles an hour. You can go
Okay.
faster. Can you do it for long distances? You know, not really.
Sure.
So being 2 miles out with clients, I don't have an hour to get them back if there's some kind of an emergency.
Sure.
You know, so the Torpedo Ultralight allows me just to hook up to them. I can have them back to shore and, you know.
You're towing them?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
And most of the time, I mean, all of the time up until this point, I'm just towing them at the end of the day because they're tired. And we had a good day. I'm like, hey, I'll save you the pedal back, you know,
That's
if
cool.
we're in the pedal drive and just tow them back.
What do you see like who does this appeal to? Like if somebody hasn't done this before, like what kind of anglers do you see? I mean, is this people that are, you know, boat anglers that want to try something different, or is it new anglers? I mean, is there any kind of trends or?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. You know, you get people that are adrenaline junkies and they just want to go out on that big water experience and
Sure.
get the adrenaline that comes with it.
Yep.
You have people like one gentleman I was talking to right before I came. He had a lawn riveted boat that ended up leaking, you know, and it got the insurance totaled it out and everything. But he's looking to get into kayak fishing because one of the best times in his life was fishing on that boat with his son. You know, so he's trying to decide, I don't want another boat,
Sure.
but I want something that I can get in, get out, and enjoy that with my kid.
Okay.
You know, so he's looking at the kayaks. And then you have like, you know, retirees that don't want to go out and spend all that money on the boat. They can get into a kayak for cheap and not have to, you know, spend their retirement money on
Yeah.
fuel and stuff like that unnecessarily.
Like,
you know.
what have you seen? I mean, you're kind of a pioneer in this. I mean, what has the growth trend been? I mean, I know like kayak fishing in general, just nationally, has been,
yeah.
you know, it's grown dramatically. What have you seen like specific to the Great Lakes?
There's definitely a lot more kayak anglers on Lake Erie now. We even have, you know, like the Lake Erie Walleye Trail, the kayak division,
Mm.
which, you know, it's a little bit smaller group of guys, consistent guys that show up every time. But you know, it's definitely growing a lot in this area,
Okay.
and especially this area. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I came down is, you know, the growth in the kayak industry or the kayaks in this area fishing, you know, off of Lake Ontario or in the rivers.
Right. I know safety is a huge factor. I mean, what are kind of your, you know, rules of the road, so to speak? What are the like safety precautions that, you know, you have to follow every day?
Right. You know, there's not a lot of requirements for kayaks as far as the Coast Guard's concerned. They make you have a life jacket on board, and at nighttime you have to have a headlamp or some kind of light that you can signal if you know there's going to be some kind of collision or something like that. With that being said, anybody that comes out with me has to wear their life jacket. You know, we don't. There's no partying or anything like that out there. You are in your own vessel. You're the captain of your vessel, which means that you're responsible for, you know,
Your own safety.
Your own
Yeah,
safety.
yeah.
Does anyone ever look at you and go, "I am the captain now"? I would do
don't think
that.
so. But that,
Yeah, you would do that. Yeah.
that would be great. Make a great video.
Yeah.
But you know, that's the whole point. You know, obviously, like I'm taking people out to catch fish, to teach them how to fish. But it's kind of a self-imposed job. You know, I have all the safety knowledge, all this knowledge to keep me safe out there. So that's the stuff that I try to pass along on my trips because it's not like they're going to come out with me every year like they do with the boat guys.
Sure.
They don't want to buy a boat. They go out with the charter captain.
Yeah.
You know, these guys, they're really coming out for the fishing experience and the safety experience. And then once they get that knowledge, they're going to go out by
They're going
themselves.
by their own.
Yeah.
They're going to go buy their own equipment. I know your own personal boat is just down the way here, rigged up, and you've got the strobe on there as far as the strobe light goes for visibility, the flags, everything in there. Where and then I noticed it looks like you always have your VHF radio handy too. Yeah.
I also carry a personal locator beacon with me.
Okay.
I have a little pocket air horn. You know,
Okay.
Coast Guard requires to have a whistle.
Yep.
But what boat on the Great Lakes
Sure is going to hear a whistle. Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a little pocket air horn that I carry with me. And along the way, as we're fishing, you know, I'm teaching this stuff to my clients while we're out there. The weather conditions, you know, maybe something that I can point out, like, look at this situation. You know, here's what you want to pay attention to.
That actually that makes me curious. So like, what's the most weather you can fish in comfortably? I mean, as far as like wave height and everything goes. I mean, what's comfortable out there where it's not extreme or anything like that?
I mean, it really depends on the style of waves. You know, obviously chop can be a little bit challenging when you have like that bathtub effect.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had the big water, not this one, but the one I had last year with the walleye rat. I had that out. It was probably 6 to 7s.
Wow.
But it was
Seems a little extreme to me, but yeah, okay.
From the northeast for like 2 days.
So kind of rolling
waves, but they were
far between, spaced out. Okay.
Seconds apart.
Okay.
Not really. Like I wouldn't take clients out anything over like 2 foot unless they requested that.
Yeah.
They wanted to come out and get that rough water experience.
Okay.
But that's the biggest that I've been in.
Okay.
And it handles it really well. You know, obviously you want to make sure that you're prepared for the water conditions.
Of course.
And one thing that I use in that situation, and it's a good thing, is I always travel into the wind. So I'm heading out, I'm traveling into the wind and the waves. If I get sick, something breaks, that wind and the waves is going to push me back to the ramp. You know, I'm not going to have to fight my way back. And there was a day, actually, that day we were out in the 6 to 7 footers. Just finished up the Cleveland Boat Show. 4 days there, you know, so we weren't eating real good. And then the next day we went out of McGee East, stopped at a pizza place out there. We had pizza with onions and yellow peppers and
where's this going?
So you're telling us you got the poison out of your body on the way back.
so you know, I ate half that pizza. The next morning, I had 3 more pieces for breakfast, and then we went out in those conditions.
Yeah.
And I was fine when I'm going full speed with the torpedo, you know, having a blast on those waves. But as soon as I slowed down, everything started kicking up. I experienced seasickness for the first time.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Pretty bad, you know.
Yeah.
And I looked at my buddy and I'm like, man, I'm glad you were out here. He's like, dude, your plan to travel into the wind and the waves is what saved you.
Yeah.
You know, because I wasn't in a condition where I could really paddle. I had the pedal drive, I had the motor, but the way that the motor was set up, it had a little bit of play. So the waves picked it up and put it on the inside of my stopping point for the steering. So my motor was just 90 degrees. Couldn't use the motor. So I put my pedal drive in and I used my paddle as the rudder.
As the rudder. Wow.
You know, in between stopping and chumming the water.
Yeah.
And then laying my head on the seat to
Well,
recoup that wind and the waves, you know, and that's how you want to plan your trip.
Yes.
I would.
Worst case
How was the
scenario.
bite that day?
Terrible.
I would call that a pro tip. When that's
Yeah.
don't pound an entire pizza, you know, prior to going out in big water.
Yeah, you
So-
don't realize how that stuff affects you, like
Right.
what you drink, or you know, you eat some spicy food or something like that, and it turns up your stomach, and that just makes it a bad day.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's
that's
valuable
a
tip.
valuable lesson too.
yeah.
So I carry like Pedialyte powder packs with me.
Mhm.
Anybody gets seasick or something like that, I always have water.
Mhm.
Throw something in there. Nothing brought me back like Pedialyte.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a
so-
good pro tip.
Just carrying stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe some snacks. Always water.
Yeah. Question up here. Try to ask it. What size kayaks are you using?
Right now I'm in the 12.5-foot Native Slayer Max.
Okay.
I will be transitioning to the new Native Titan X, which is also a 12.5-foot. As soon as that comes in. Before that, I was in the Big Water 13.5-foot.
Okay.
Which does great.
A little longer, narrower hull, or
Yeah, a
Okay.
little bit longer, a little bit narrower. Really, I would say 12-foot minimum.
Okay.
There are some 10-foot platforms that do pretty good, like the Old Town 106 pedal drive. I've had clients take that out there, and it handles really well. But when you get like a small recreational boat that's 10 foot, it's not going to handle well. It's not going to track. It's going to be all over the place.
Sure.
And most of the time, those recreational boats, if you take a water over the side, it's going to flood the boat. You know, so having some kind of bulkheads or something like that,
okay.
if you are going to go that route.
All right. Another one here from Jim. Jim wants to know how do you stagger your lines to avoid tangles in a kayak?
So what I do, I have my rod holder sitting out like this,
Mhm.
and my rods are 8.6, and they're sitting on the rod holders long ways like this. So I have 17, about 20 foot of spread. Excuse me, 20 foot of spread there,
Mhm.
and then I put my third line right down the center.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one way I keep them apart, you know, I'm always running different programs. If I'm running a short lead on my left side, I'm running a long lead on my right side. You know,
Okay.
so that's going to be a lot
Different.
lower.
Yeah.
And if I'm running my center line, you know, I try to make sure that my left and right lines are going deep, maybe on like a snap weight program.
Okay.
And then I'll run like a
Flat
shallow,
line or something out the back.
flat
Okay.
line
That
out
makes
the
sense.
back. I have used like planer floats or planer boards.
Mhm.
Planer boards are kind of a challenge because you're facing forward, you're not facing the boards.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you only have one on each side, so you can't really see that board, you know, move out of
Okay.
position.
Yeah.
So it's real hard to identify the bite. But there's it's a ready rig planer float, which it has a swivel that connects to the line and then fingers. So when you get a hit, it pulls out of the fingers and then that just slides on there.
Oh.
No restrictions, so you can actually feel the fish.
Interesting.
With those, that you can get it away from your boat and actually identify the bite. And then you don't have to bite the board on the way in.
Yeah. Interesting.
Very good. Anything else you got for us before we let you go today?
Oh, we can talk all day.
You guys want to talk for a second? I'm going to go see if I can find our next guest. He's not hanging out in the green room.
Okay.
So I'm going to go see, and you guys can chat it up here for a few more minutes. I'll be
Yeah.
right
Sounds
back.
good. Yeah. So I stopped by your booth yesterday, and what caught my attention, of course, is you had a fishhawk mounted on the bow.
Oh, yes.
That's pretty cool. It's like you don't see that every day. How do you actually use the fishhawk in a kayak? I mean, how does that work?
Well, especially with trolling, it definitely makes a big difference in the current. you know, to identify it. Really, the reason that I got the fish hook was so that I could teach my clients on how to read their rod tips. You know, that way they know, is my bait doing the right speed? Does it have the right action? So if I'm teaching them how to read the rod tips and I can drop that fish hook down and say, look, now you understand we have a mile-an-hour difference between your surface water and your water underneath. You know, that's why your rod tip.
Yeah, so you're doing the same thing that we're doing in the boats. You're just doing it in a lot closer, sitting on the water essentially. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
And with this one, I have it on the bow, so it's not going to get wrapped in my
Sure.
motor back there or in my lines or anything like
Sure.
that.
So you can net fish and you can do all
Right.
you can do all that stuff. Yeah.
And you know, with the kayak, like a lot of times I'm changing directions a lot.
Yeah.
So some days I'll just leave that thing down there. I know some guys drop it down there, get
Sure.
the reading, pull it back up.
Yeah.
But I'll leave it down there.
Leave it down.
Just so I know, especially on a tournament.
Yeah.
You know,
Interesting.
I don't. Those little things really make a huge difference.
Yeah, well, that was one of when we designed the X2, that's what one of the things we designed it for was we were getting some requests from, kayak anglers like yourself. So, it was cool. Like I say, I don't see that every day. So that was pretty neat to see and just talk to you and see how you're actually putting it in practice. So,
Right.
so cool. Chris, you got her set here, bud?
Go here, we're
I saw Donnie up there in the feeding room. We're getting ready. So yeah, no, that's neat. When do you guys start in the year? I mean, like when do you start your your season as far as your guiding season goes?
I'll fish all year long.
Okay.
As long as there's not ice sheets on the water.
Okay.
You know, with ice sheets, that creates a totally different situation. You go out, you launch, it's clear, you come back, and you have a mile-long sheet of ice in between you and the
Yeah,
launch.
that's not cool. Right.
No. But we do go out all winter long. Dry suits are required, though.
Oh, really?
From October 15th on average to May 15th. Water temperature is below 60 degrees, which is extremely dangerous and very deadly.
Okay.
So wintertime, dry suits are required. Summertime, obviously, we don't need dry suits.
Yeah.
So that's when most of the trips are.
Okay. Makes
There's
sense.
some hardcore guys that just got a dry suit and they want to come out and experience that winter fishing situation.
very good.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. Appreciate
Absolutely.
you coming on. Good to have you
Really
on the
nice
show.
really nice to meet you, man.
Yeah.